Hi folks, welcome back. We made it here to the top 10. And the hardest part about putting one of these lists together is sort of coming up with some type of criteria. Like what do you base these rankings on? There's a website called boardgamegeek.com, and you can put your collection in and you can make your rankings and stuff. But when you think about it, it's like do I pick the game that I've played the most out of all the games that I have? Do I pick the game that if you ask me right now, hey, let's play a game, what do you want to play? Which one would I pick? Do I just put them head to head and go, would I rather play this or that? You kind of have to take all those things into consideration. Nostalgia plays a little bit of a factor. I also look at the different types of games and different types of games that I like to play, and then try to figure out which one is the best in class for a different style of game. So I kind of try to take all those different things into consideration. And over the years on BGG, I've probably had 5 or 6 different games that have been in my top ranking. And actually, this morning I just went in and I changed mine, put my number 1, and we'll talk about that. So these are pretty fluid, but essentially, if you're in the top 10, this is a game that I really like. So my number 10 is a game called Lords of Waterdeep, and I bought this game at a hobby shop in Gettysburg, actually. Kyle and I were going out to Keystone Boys State, and we stopped in this shop, and we only had the money to buy one game, so I had to make a decision. And there were a lot of really good options, but I had heard good things about this. And this game has a Dungeons and Dragons theme, which I've mentioned in the past. I'm not really into role-playing games or D&D necessarily, but I had heard this is a pretty good game. And the theme in this is cool, but it's sort of secondary. This is really a Euro game. It's a worker placement game. I've mentioned Stone Age before as a great intro worker placement game. This is another one that I would rank right up there. You get a certain number of guys to work with, and you put them out on different places on the board. If somebody else goes to a location, then that blocks you and you can't go there. In this game, you're collecting different types of people, rogues and priests and warriors, to join your team to go on these different missions or expeditions. But essentially they're really just orange cubes and purple cubes and white cubes. The game would have probably been a little cooler if there were miniatures, but it would have taken up so much space. But you're trying to collect those different resources essentially, and then use those to complete missions and score points. But as far as worker placement games goes, it's one of my favorites just because it's simple, and yet there's a pretty good game there. It's a game that I can come back to, and I don't have to read through a real detailed rule book to remember how to play. And it works pretty well with different player counts too. Usually we play it with 3 or 4. I think you can play it with 5 players, and it works with all those. So Lords of Waterdeep, really great choice if you want to play a worker placement game. This is one I would highly recommend. My number 9 is sort of a surprise pick, and that is a game called Blockus, or Blokus. I always call it Blockus. The first time I saw this game, I was like, looks like a mass market game. I think you can buy it at Walmart or Target. Can't be any good. And I have actually seen it on sale in places for $8 or $9. If you get a chance to grab this for $8 or $9, grab it. The game is amazing in that there's one rule in the whole game. You get these different Tetris kind of pieces, and each one is different. And the only rule is you can't put them next to each other orthogonally. You have to line them up so that the corners touch. And I'm building from my corner of the board while you're building from your corner, and the other guys are building from their corners of the board. And essentially it's a race to the middle, but you're trying to use up all your pieces and fit them in. So you're kind of jumping over different people. Super simple game, goes really fast. The only downside to this game is I would really only recommend it at 4 players. You could play it at 2, you could play it at 3, but it shines at 4. And the only way I'll play it is at 4 players. But for a 4-player game that you could play in probably 15 minutes, this is a great game. It's so unique as an abstract sort of spatial awareness kind of game. It's really fantastic. Blockus. Number 8, as I've mentioned a number of times before, nature-themed games. Number 8 is Parks. And we talked about trekking the national parks before. This game I like even better than that. Same theme, national parks. This game has really beautiful artwork. The cards are awesome. But you're going along a trail. You have hikers, and you're hiking along this trail, and you're gathering up different resources, and then you're using those to essentially visit these parks. Just like trekking the national parks, it's just that the game mechanism, the theme is almost the same. The mechanisms are different. In this game, the Dice Tower guys call it a ratchet system. You know, you can hike down the trail, but you can't go backwards. And you have this little campfire token. You can jump to a space where somebody else already is, but in order to do that, you have to use your campfire. Once you use your campfire, you can't go to the same place as somebody else. And so you're constantly trying to manage your resources and capture these different parks. Like I said, the artwork is beautiful. You can buy different equipment, different gear that helps get you advantages. There's some seasonal changes because you go through 4 seasons. You do different hikes through 4 different seasons. Really great game. Number 7 on my list is a game called Horrified. And this is my best in class for co-op games. I've mentioned before that I'm not that big into co-op games, but if I'm playing a cooperative game or recommending a cooperative game, this is my number 1 choice. I love the game Horrified. There are different movie monsters like Frankenstein and a werewolf and the creature from the Black Lagoon, and you can customize the difficulty level of the game depending on which characters you want to go up against. And you may start out and only go up against 2. Play it on easy level, and then you could go up against 3. I've never tried to go up against 4. I can't imagine being able to win with 4 different monsters out there. The other interesting thing, and you're gathering up different relics and tokens around the board. The cool thing about this game is it takes a different approach to go after each of these monsters. So to defeat Dracula, you have to smash his coffins, and then you have to go attack him. To go up against a werewolf, you have to find these different blue tokens on the board and then use those to cure the disease that he has. I don't remember the name of it, that turns him into a werewolf. And then once you find the cure for the disease, you got to take the antidote to the werewolf, and you make him not a werewolf anymore. But it's really cool because each of the characters is different, and each one has sort of a different difficulty level. This game, I find, is different depending on the number of players as well. I think the higher the player count in this game, the more difficult I think the game is. Because in the game, you take a turn and you do things to gather up resources and try to, go after the bad guys. But then the bad guys get a chance to attack you back, to go back after you. And the more players you have on the board, the more opportunities there are for the bad guys to attack. If you have a small number of players, 2 or 3 players, you can kind of spread out around the board, and the bad guys may just chase you around a lot but not be able to attack you. If you have 5 players playing this game, you're going to be spread out. There's going to be somebody near the bad guys at all times, and so somebody's getting whacked every single turn. So I think with a higher player count, this is a little bit more challenging game. But Horrified, this is another one you can get at Target. Great cooperative game. Number 6 on my list is a unique game called On Tour. And On Tour is a roll and write game, which means everybody has their own board, and you have like a dry erase marker and you write on your board. And in this game, you're playing as like a rock band traveling around the country, and you're trying to visit as many cities to perform as many gigs as you can. And of course, it's got a map, so I love it because I love games with maps. On the back side of the United States map is actually a Europe map, so you can play 2 different maps. But you're rolling these dice, and you're taking the numbers. There's 2 big chunky dice in the game that are really nice. And so if you roll a 7 and a 3, say for instance, you'll put a 37 on the board and you'll put a 73 somewhere on the board. And the whole game is, at the end, you have to connect up the dots to as many cities as you can. But you have to go from always from a lower number to a higher number. And you just connect up as many cities as you can. And there are what you do each turn is there's region cards. You flip those over and then you roll the dice. And you have to put your 2 numbers in one of those regions. And so It's a really cool game. I played this at Origins in Columbus. They had a big sort of like a craps table set up, so they had a giant version of this, and I just jumped in. The guy's like, here, come on, you can play, and he showed me how to play it. Went over, bought a copy, and I love it. It's a great game. You can play it with a whole bunch of people all at once, and it doesn't slow the game down at all, because essentially you're all taking the turn at the same time. So On Tour, one of my favorites. There's a really good app for this one too. If you like playing games on your phone, there's a good app for On Tour. Number 5 on my list is a game called Seven Wonders, and maybe it should have been number 7, but actually for a long time this was my number 1 game. My brother introduced me to Seven Wonders a few years ago. This is another card drafting game where you deal out the cards, you pick one, pass it to the next person. It's got a Seven Wonders theme, the Seven Wonders of the ancient world, and each person, each player plays a different civilization. And it's kind of a civilization building game. You're building technology, you're building militaries to fight with each other, you're building public works buildings to score you points. There are a number of expansions for this game. We only have one called the Cities expansion that adds spies into the game, which are pretty cool. We played this game wrong for a really long time, and it was my number 1 game for a really long time. When we realized that we were playing it wrong, obviously we corrected our mistake and we started playing it right, and I kind of didn't like the game as much at that point. The way we were playing it was much more difficult, and I actually kind of like it that way, but I think it was just because I got used to playing it that way. I haven't played it enough with the right rules to get the hang of it yet, because it changed pretty significantly. So maybe it's just because I'm not as good at it, but it'll take me a while to get used to the newer rules now that we've got it right. But it's almost like getting a brand new game, because between the way we used to play it and the way that you're supposed to play it, changed it enough that made it kind of a whole new game. But Seven Wonders is sort of a modern classic. You can tell by looking at the box. It's won a gazillion different awards and is very, very highly rated, and it's one of my favorites. Number 4 on my list is a game that you probably can't find anymore. It's called Age of Empires. And I mentioned previously the game Age of Mythology, which was a computer game. Age of Empires was the computer game that came before Age of Mythology. And it's a really good game. Age of Mythology, the computer game, was way better than Age of Empires, because it added in all those mythological creatures. Age of Empires is way better in terms of a board game. This is probably the most perfectly designed board game that I've played. It is so well balanced. It gives you lots of options. It's simple. In this game, you are Europeans going over to colonize the New World. And so you have to discover certain lands. You build up a mercantile economy where you get trade goods. You're also trying to populate your colonies. There's a warfare element to it. There are a bunch of really great choices. You have missionaries that you can take over there, or merchants. You're trying to invest in different types of people that are going to give you advantages in this new world. It's not complicated though. It's straightforward. It's easy to jump into, and no matter which strategy you choose to take, you got a decent chance of winning. I'm not very good at this game. I've won it a few times. My kids, Grady's really good at this game. They beat me more than I beat them. But this is one of the best games I've ever played. If you ever find it at a thrift area or whatever, they don't print this game anymore, but if you ever find it, I would highly recommend to grab a copy. It's got really great little miniatures in it, and it's a fantastic game. Okay, my number 3 game, the Bronze Medalist. This is another game that has been number 1 on my list before, and that's Ticket to Ride. And I'm going to cheat in a way. I'm going to throw in all the Ticket to Rides together. There are a lot of different versions of this game. My favorite is still the base version, the American map version. I've played the Europe version. I didn't like that as much. It adds in these station elements that I didn't really care for. This game we have with what's called the 1910 expansion, I think. and it provides bigger cards, like regular playing card size cards, which you got to have that. I wish they'd have just included that in the base game, because I don't like the little tiny cards that come with this game. But in this game, essentially, you're collecting sets of different colored trains, and then you're playing them on the board to establish train routes between different cities, and you're trying to connect between different cities. Really great entry level family weight game. We have the Nordic version of this game as well, which is a Scandinavian map. Adds tunnels and ferries to the game, which makes it interesting. That one's only for 2 or 3 players. Really great version. I've heard that the best map for this game is actually Pennsylvania. It has Pennsylvania on one side, and it has, I think, the United Kingdom on the other side. I'd love to get my hands on a copy of that. People in the gaming world talk about Grail games, like their holy grail, if games they're looking for. That would be my Grail game, would be the Pennsylvania map for Ticket to Ride. I don't know where you can even get it anymore, but I've heard that's the best one out there. I had the Asia pack for this before, and I traded it to somebody because I didn't really care for that map. Like I said, I like the USA map the best, but if you can pick up Ticket to Ride, if you're new to gaming, there's no better place to start than Ticket to Ride. All right, my number 2 game, if you were to ask me right now, hey, if I'm going to come over to your house at some day this week, and what game would you be playing? This is the game that you're more than likely going to find us playing at my house, and that's Wingspan. My wife is not a big fan of board gaming, but this is the game that she loves, and she'll play with me no matter how many times. We pretty much play this 2 or 3 times a night on a lot of weeknights. The kids will go to bed. We'll sit down at 10 o'clock at night and we'll play through 2 or 3 games of Wingspan. Nature theme, which, as I've said a million times, I love the nature theme. I've loved birds ever since we did a unit in ornithology back in Dr. Check's biology class in high school. He let us go out in the backyard of the school and look for birds, and I've loved birds ever since. We have bird feeders all over our yard. So this game, there is an engine building game where each bird has a certain power, and you build out an aviary and you add birds to it. There are different eggs and different food resources that you use as sort of the currency in the game, and it's really fantastic. We've actually bought 2 expansions. I've said I don't typically buy expansions, but this game, we love it so much that we've bought 2 expansions that give you more birds. One was the Europe expansion and the other was Oceania. We love it, and we've bought special bits to upgrade the birds, to upgrade the resource, the little tokens with the food. I made Joanne a custom end of round scoring board for Christmas. We've tricked out this game as much as we can because we play it. We've had this game for a little over a year now, and we've played it almost 100 times because I've kept score. I'm keeping a spreadsheet running total of the scores of all the games of Wingspan that we've played. And so if you were to come to my house on any given night, this is the game you're most likely to see set up at the table. It's outstanding, and it's right in the wheelhouse for our kind of game. So that leaves us with number 1. And like I said, I changed my ranking this morning. I got to thinking about it, and this particular game, if you added up all the gameplays that I have over the years of every single game, you added them all together, I've played this game more times than all of the other games put together. And my brothers would know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's Championship Baseball. This game, out of the box, is terrible. I don't even remember how to play it out of the box, because we started playing this game when I was 12 years old. I actually have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles folder with all of our stats still written in it. My 12-year-old handwriting on a piece of paper with pencil. We've kept all of our stats for 35, 40 years for this game. And there's other sports games. I'm not big on sports games for board games, actually, and there are other games out there. There's one called Stratomatic that a lot of people have played. They all seem very complicated. This game is super simple. You have cards, you roll 2 dice, You know, either left field's open, center field's open, or right field's open. You roll a die, you look on the card. If you rolled a 3-4, if you have Dave Winfield, 3-4s, fly to left field homer. The cool thing about this game is we have the cards memorized. You know, Cal Ripken, 4-6, fly to left field homer. Mike Schmidt, you know, you don't even have to look at the cards anymore. We've played it so many times, we just have them all memorized. Ricky Henderson, 2-3, walk. But you roll the dice, and we created score sheets so we keep score of the baseball game while we're playing. And then we used to play 54 games of this. We play it 54 times, add up all of our statistics. We'd multiply all the statistics by 3, so you have a 162 game season. And then we'd pick all-star teams and stuff for the guys who had the best stats. Years ago, we started playing 40 games, multiplying by 4, and then adding 2 more games, because we realized we could get through a season a lot quicker if we only had to play 42 times instead of 52 times. But I don't even know what season we're on. It's in the 20s, so if you take 20 times 52 or whatever, we've played this game a ton. And we don't even use the box. We don't use the board. We completely rewrote the rules. Nowadays, we keep all of our championship baseball stuff in one of these plastic cases because we can take it anywhere. But this game, you know, we used to play, like I said, when I was a teenager. My buddy Dana Shuppelman would come over and he'd spend a weekend and we'd just lay out on the floor and play this game all weekend long. And the great thing is, this game came out in the early 1980s. So the cards that come with the game are guys in baseball that I grew up with. Reggie Jackson, Mike Schmidt, Pete Rose, you know, Rod Carew, Steve Sachs, guys like that. What we do is we use baseball cards, current baseball cards, and match them up with the old players. So if you draft Andrew McCutchen now, you know, when he was MVP, we matched him up with the Robin Yount card because his characteristics as a player were closest to that guy back then. So what's cool is you can use the old game, draft current guys with baseball cards, and then match them up and still be playing the game with the current players. What I like to do now is I draft a retro team and then play against my kids with their current players. And so, you know, I have, you know, Cal Ripken or Pete Rose on my team, and they're playing with the current players who are their favorite guys, you know, Aaron Judge and guys like that. So this is my favorite game of all time. If I only had one game and I had to play that game for the rest of my life, this would be the one. Wingspan's a close second, but championship baseball, definitely my #1 game of all time. It's brought me more joy than any other game I've ever had. So hope you enjoyed this list. I'd be interested down in the comments to hear what your favorite games are. Talk to you later.